Hello.
Right.
Hello.
Hey, Jeremy.
How's it going?
Hello,
All
hello.
right. How are you? I'm like,
Prepping for today's apparent heat wave in Seattle.
Jeremy, are you in the office or in at home?
This is just a corner of my house that looks like an office.
Yes, I was gonna comment on how I really like the minimalistic approach.
Only looks this way from about here to here.
Okay.
all right, it's 3 minutes past, so let's get started. There's nothing much on the agenda, but welcome everybody to the July 15th SIG Multicluster call. And the first topic is on the scrub, KIP 5313, and this is actually just homework for Jeremy.
Homework
Waiting.
taken.
Yeah, waiting on your input.
Yeah, I
So-
put it there not to nag at the chairs. I know both
Yeah,
chairs
but
are.
that's fine. That's what the scrub's for. So
It was just more like shine the light on it a little bit.
yeah.
Thank you both for queuing it up eventually. Thank you. That's it up for me.
And yeah, and I just added a comment that I started the Cubebind discussion on the mailing list just an hour or so ago. So people with thoughts, feel free to pitch in there or +1. And if nobody else has any topics,
I I want to comment a little bit on the coupon. So
yeah,
in the website and in the documentation, they mentioned that it's still kind of in the prototype stage.
yeah.
So I wonder if the maintainers are here in this call and see if,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
Marvin's there.
I think it's only me today.
Yeah.
So how what is the process of getting some repo into Kubernetes, like if the repo is more of a prototype, is it okay? Does it needs to be, well refined before it gets in? Because the last repo that we added was the multi-cluster controller, and I think that had quite a bit of maturity, not as an individual repo, but I think like KCP has been working on it for quite a while. And then we're like, yep, this is what kind of the whole community wants, and then we add to the repo. But I'm just wondering, what's the status on this particular project, the Kubernetes?
Jeremy, you have your hand up before I go about Kubernetes status, maybe.
Yeah, you first. You first.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, it basically is what it says, I think, on the website. Like Kubernetes is like in early stages. It was built initially as a prototype, and we've been slowly like moving it forward. So I would put it a little bit past the prototype, but also a lot of trial and error, basically, in like figuring out what the API should look like and all of that. So yeah, it's fairly early stage, I would say.
I think with the runtime changes, our goal was to basically create visibility so that we could start getting feedback and getting people to try it out. Stephen, maybe this is for you and I to take point on, but I think we need to separate the idea of like an endorsed official solution from a project that's happening with the SIG, and like we're iterating and we don't know where it's going to go, and try to figure out how that works. Because I think like certainly having these projects like frequently around the SIG is good for exposure and discovery, and getting the feedback and so that we can shape them. I don't know that will, like, I expect that often that won't mean that this becomes like, not everything we bring in is going to become like the correct Kubernetes way to do something. And we need to figure out kind of how to draw that distinction so that we can make it clear when something's definitely an incubation versus mature.
I mean, I think the least would be like a big disclaimer on the repository, like right at the beginning of the README. Hey, this is work in progress. This is something that we're building right now. Like, it's not something endorsed or something. It's
Right.
Yeah.
Mostly I think about this like in a vacuum. I think that's very easy. Mostly I think about this from like when there's multiple projects that are exploring something. You know, we don't want to unfairly too early promote one over the rest. I think that's a concern. I know that we've heard feedback in the past that sometimes like we're just trying to simplify something and like make some statements so that we can speak a common language or have a couple projects to reference, and maintainers of other projects in related areas sometimes feel left out. We want to make sure that we're not doing that. That's kind of my main concern. Otherwise, I default to like everything should be around, say, multi-cluster, because this is the right group to be discussing those changes. I just want to make sure that we're not alienating anyone else in the community.
Yeah, definitely. And that's been part of the conversation leading up to this, is that there doesn't really seem to be anything else. And the goal is, on the one hand, to come up with a sensible spec and maybe, but not necessarily, have a reference implementation, which could be kube-bind if things work out, but that's TBD. Mike, you've got your hand up. I guess it's related to your chat comment.
Yes, I just want to echo the question or concern about really having exploratory repositories, right? That's the kind of thing that I think what you're saying is there should be a way to have exploratory repositories that are no more than temporary explorations, and that's a new kind of thing. And I think that's kind of the point here. And I want to echo. I think that's a great idea. Yes, the thing about kubebind, is this the kubebind that like came out of KCP a couple of years ago?
Well, it's also coming from the beautiful mind of Stefan Szymanski, but I wouldn't
Right.
call it like coming out of KCP.
Right.
It's
Okay. You're right. Okay. Yes, that was only for rough identification. My point is, there's no mention of it in the agenda. And you said something about a Slack conversation. I can't find the Slack conversation. So could somebody put something in the agenda that I could read and follow to understand what you guys have been saying already about it?
Well, if you search for kubebind, you'll find loads of mentions in the agenda. It was discussed last week.
Okay. Thank you.
The week before, I think, a couple of weeks before that. And there's links to the presentation. The recordings aren't available on YouTube yet, but we'll get that sorted. And there hasn't been a Slack conversation.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misheard. Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi everyone. Yeah, it's actually my first time joining the meeting, but I searched around, found it could be like just a good place to discuss some topic. Because if we don't have any other topics today, I want to discuss one existing about the API, multi-cluster DNS, the endpoint DNS API. Because in some cases we found like there can be the format which is better to put like a cluster ID in the end. But I wonder why that option is not really like be in first bring up in the community in that way. So if I have this kind of a topic, is this the good place for bring the discussion and maybe before submitting a PR or anything changes, which yeah, people can help me guide me to the right way for their discussion and communications.
Yeah, this is definitely the right forum to discuss really anything multi-cluster. I think, just looking at the light agenda and the time of year, I think this is an unusually quiet week. I think we're probably seeing folks in their summer vacations here. So what I would recommend is if you have thoughts or proposed change, a short doc, link it in the agenda, and yeah, I think that'll let everybody know who wants to discuss that they should join like next week, for example. But yeah, this is definitely the right group.
I see. So like people usually bring like short one pager for these kind of ideas into the agenda so that everyone can do some prepare.
Yeah, that's what I'd recommend. Laura, you
Yeah,
have thoughts.
well, yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that like the agenda is totally open. Not only literally the doc like is editable by anybody, but we really do mean that like anybody can add anything. So if there's any like I know some other SIGs like have an approval process for agenda items or like have to like be filled out by a certain time, but that isn't necessarily the case here. So if you feel free to put something on, even if it is kind of unbaked. That being said, like Jeremy is saying, if you have a doc that people can read ahead, if you have some slides you can share, if you have some like sort of demo that you can show. I'm not necessarily saying that's the case for what you were just mentioning, but in general, like that like makes it easier for people to follow when the meeting actually occurs. I think there might be some back references that I can pull up too if you want to see some examples of some other like initial thought docs that have occurred in this SIG. So yeah, that's just what I want to say.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, and you don't need a doc. You can just write, good call out. You can just write a topic, and then we can all discuss live. Putting your thoughts in a short doc might be helpful in kind of gathering the right people to make sure that they actually show up that week. That's more what I'm thinking, especially because I would expect for the next month or so, attendance will be spottier than usual for a lot of people during summer vacation.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, everyone. If no one else have questions, I heard you just mentioned about the multi-cluster controller runtime. I wonder, like, based on our existing like multi-cluster API implementation, it has like a few like coupled with the CDN in the AWS Cloud Map, but looks like we don't have a like a mature just a multi-cluster controller. Can people just deploy of doing that? So I wonder if any context people like why we're not going that way first. If like now we have a few implementations of this multi-cluster service API that is in the document, but looks which is we don't have just the Kubernetes service, which is we can definitely develop ourselves. But I wonder why we're like in the beginning, people didn't think about just build up a controller, which is can help people just work on this. Yeah, I see Laura raised hand.
Yeah, and maybe Jeremy understands the question too, because he's wiggling in that Jeremy way. But yeah, so there this technically like predates me a little bit, but definitely like the position of the SIG overall and like how to handle any sort of like standardization of either new thoughts or existing thoughts in the community is to focus on defining the APIs and not necessarily defining the reference implementations or the core pieces of the implementations. That's not always possible, but it is, I would say, like the preference. So yeah, the fact that there isn't like the SIG multi-cluster MCS controller implementation beyond like some really basic stuff for like some testing is by design. And that was like discussed. That being said, I do think with the multi-cluster runtime project and some other stuff that's going on, the frameworks that people would be using are getting like more mature themselves. And there have been discussions in the past couple months about certain types of software that this SIG might like provide as binaries, usually like not exactly what you're saying, like an MCS controller, but some other things. So I don't think that's like completely out of scope in general. But I do think for MCS in particular, it would be like a pretty big, which this can still happen, but it would be a pretty big like shift in terms of like the goal of that project to provide the like controller intrinsic to Kubernetes or even third party as SIG multi-cluster, as opposed to leaving it open for implementations to like interpret the parts that we worked really hard to say, like, this is implementation's choice, not ours, or whatever. Yeah, that was like by design. Hands have flown up. So who's next? I don't know. I didn't catch it.
I got my hand up first, but you, Rick, already talked about Jeremy, so let's let him go first.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think, Laura, you kind of nailed it. With MCS, one of the big things is that there were already several projects in flight, kind of solving that space, and we wanted to align on an API. So there wasn't a lot of value in having like a default Kubernetes implementation, because depending on your environment, like Submarine or Istio, or if you're on GKE using the built-in implementation, like are better choices, like tailor fit for your use cases. So like we did actually talk about like, should we have a default implementation, but it kind of wouldn't want to use it. And so that was part of it as well. It's like there's enough, there are enough choices out there on how to consume the API. Building a default for the sake of having one didn't make a huge amount of sense, and we sort of had a bash script version in the repo for testing at some point. You could argue that that's close enough.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeremy. I forgot to mention the GKE has, and unfortunately we are using AWS, so that's why we like not able to try out the GKE one. But I do heard like this is not fully out of scope. We probably consider in the future, and we can have our own implementation at this moment. And I see a Mac raise hand for a while, so.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of give again, a lot of this predates me also. I'm just kind of here only sometimes, but the idea I'm getting here is that this group is, this group isn't inventing this field, right? This group is people coming together who have already been working on separate solutions, right? So there's a lot of other stuff going on. And the point here is to try to come up with common APIs, because there's already a lot of implementations around there.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
I just mentioned that Owen added the credentials kept to the scrub, and that's also waiting for Jeremy and me to look at. So more homework for the summer. And yeah, there's some discussion going on in the chat there about MCS API and Istio. And one of the things about Istio too is that Istio relies a lot on its own enhanced services. So if you look at services from the Istio perspective, they add a lot more to the service concept compared to what's in the MCS API, so it doesn't quite work. It used to be possible to delegate service discovery to MCS, and Istio would sit on top of that. But that's probably not what people are using ultimately. But there is some, so for example, the service import concept ended up being used in Gateway API. So that's relevant there. Yeah.
Just to touch on that, it was indeed about the service import and exports already being used. And of course, they're essentially their own service registry, which essentially discovers Kubernetes services, but can also have services that are not Kubernetes services, just as you can exclude Kubernetes services. So it's a little bit in a weird way. But yeah, I would have expected them to reach out more, but I'm just reading your comments from Arthur, and apparently they used to. But yeah, that's. And
They
Laura.
actually did. I think I don't remember his name, but there was like an Istio guy that joined with Mike about, I don't know, 6 months ago. Don't remember, and he asked question about MCS API. But then another member of Istio made a doc why they were going not in that direction, I think. This is more hearsay because I do not have the doc in front of me.
Brian?
Just it's not on Scrub, but we are the property ladder cap is also waiting for more discussion there. We had maybe had a discussion a month ago, but Laura also gave a good summary. But I think we might need a more input from the chairs or the community. Just put it there. I can put it back to the next week's Scrub.
Yes, please. Yeah. Let me just check.
And if I may, there is also a bunch of MCS API ones, but we talked about last week, so I didn't want to harass people with that. But we'll probably start putting it in Scrub starting next week or something.
Yeah, well, that's what the Scrub's there for. So.
Just
ideally, yeah, just ideally, what I want to do is add a sort of generic link that will find all the PRs that are in flight that are related to SIG multicluster once we get the ones that are labeled correctly, and so we can just look at that, open it, and review them at the start of every call. But yeah, Ryan.
If I may, actually, that property ladder thing to me has a little bit similarity with the Kubernetes thing. Is in it, like currently most of the projects we kind of have in the SIG repo, it kind of have this endorsed field, but now it's having kind of the similar thing. We now have progressively we start to embrace more experimental or early repos. So we kind of have the similar feel of you have this ladder you're getting and then you move up. So probably they are a little bit related. So I feel like we can put them. Yeah, just that's what I.
Yeah. So actually, this one had reached a stage where Laura added, said in the PR itself that in the comments that the discussion was finished and it was just essentially waiting for Jeremy and me. But looking at the voting rules, there was some uncertainty there, it seems, and some. I'm wondering if we were discussing, and I don't think Mike's in the call. Mike Morris. No. But it'd be interesting to see how things are working out for Gateway API, because in Gateway API, as I understand it, so just to put it in the context, this is for the voting criteria governing when a property can go from experimental, which is just anybody can add an experimental property, but then it can become standard, which is where it has an agreed upon name and definition, and implementations don't have to provide it, but if they provide something like it, they are supposed to use the standard name. And then there's I can't remember what the next step up is, but essentially required, which is when all implementations have to provide the property. And so there's a discussion around how to vote for these things. And so there was some debate around, do we require a certain amount of people from who are regular participants? What does regular participant mean? How do we ensure that you can't stuff votes and all that sort of thing? And so I'm wondering if we couldn't just go for the Gateway API approach and look at implementations. Laura.
Yeah, I will react to what you just said in a second, but to an earlier thing that you said about like the state of the PR. I don't think that it can be like / approved now for sure. Like I think there's like some changes that are in those like threads that either need to be incorporated, or we need to decide like we're just not going to do that or something. I do think like we don't expect to get, or we don't, how to say, we set a timeline that we're not like waiting for, like if we keep sitting here and twiddling our thumbs about waiting for like more people to come and like answer, then like I think that's like where the like temperature of that is about like new ideas. But if we decide that we want to like copy something else, then I think that, or you know, like take some inspiration from something else, I think that's totally valid. I think what might help us move this forward, and I will get to what you were actually proposing in a second, but I think if either the leads or like in some other way, if we can figure out if there's a way we can make an executive decision on some of like those open threads and like decide like how to decide that way forward. Right now it's too open, I think, on like the PR comments of like, it could be this, or like, what about this? And like, obviously government isn't perfect, so we're gonna have to like make some people mad. But yeah, so I think if there was some, and I think what you were just talking about is a good insight of like from the perspective of a lead, what is something that is unanswered, or what is something that like we need to like, of the threads is like most important, I guess, to like massage a little bit more in order for us to like get it over the finish line. So all of that is kind of like preamble about like how I think we can get that sort of through. On the point of emphasizing implementations as like entities, I do think, harkening back to the even earlier conversation, that kind of does track with like how we built the MCS like how to say, how we built the MCS KEP as basically like a seed for implementations to like grow, you know, like that, like the ultimate purpose, and I feel like it's well emphasized in that KEP in particular, is that there are other implementations outside of the SIG that implement those things, and like our role is to support that, I guess, basically, and like give enough ground to like put that up. So I think that is like a totally valid like tactic of how to decide what a voting entity is. The specifics of like what that means, and like if you need to be active or this, that, or the other thing, it sounds like there might be some inspo to pull from Gateway API is what you're implying. And so I think that is a good avenue to go down if we are cool with that. And yeah, that's the direct comment back to like what you just said. So I guess in conclusion, 2 thoughts. One, I'm interpreting from this conversation that the most important thing to make or finalize, I guess, on this PR with more input is the voting mechanism or who has a vote, and that thing we could choose that is perhaps liked, people can comment here, I guess, would be a good idea, I guess, is to base it on implementations as entities, voting entities. That's what I'm getting from this.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary. Thanks.
Yeah, so sorry, just one more thing. I think Ryan, like tactically, I think this means that some of the comment threads that are like have been opened, like that, including ones that I put like a summary on, like they need some changes in the actual PR. And I think several of them we can probably quote unquote just do, I guess, but the one that comes to like voting and voting entities, I think that's the thing we have to do some digging on. Either I think we should do some digging on how Gateway API does it, and then at minimum we need to propose a change that's in that PR that changes the prose that's in that section, like the words that are in that section, to be about implementations as voting entities and what that means. So like take out the stuff about like you need to go to the meeting XYZ number of times and change it to whatever it is that we think defines somebody as an active implementation.
Yeah, I
yeah,
also
okay.
feel like the PI is not at the point of can be just approved yet. So there still need to be more discussions.
Yeah, well, I think right now, I think not only does there need to be some more discussion on that last point, some of the prior discussions need to be incorporated and resolved so that like there's some less noise on it. So, oh, sorry, my dog is barking. But anyways, so that's something I think we can talk about it offline too, some more too. But yeah.
Yeah, I'll clean up and bring it up to the scrub next time. Again, let's try to move this forward.
Okay,
a bit more.
Cool. Yes, that sounds like a really good step.
Yeah, because we had set a deadline for the 17th of June. It's a month later. So, so I didn't see whether it was Arthur or Owen first.
Well, I guess I will talk so that it's not awkward, but it doesn't really matter. Just you mentioned the word implementation, and this resonates a bit about a comment that I put on the PR. Like for me, implementation is a weird word because the cluster property is constructed in a way that you can have multiple producers and things like that. So, for instance, is someone that only consume cluster property can be considered in that implementation? Can someone that just publish a few of properties in there can be considered an implementation? I don't know. Just saying this out loud. I don't know if you want to debate there this year, but yeah.
Quickly, implementer in my mind was more like the provider, those multi-cluster manager, yeah, like OCM, could be Fleet, what else, Kamada, things like that. But again, yeah, we can discuss it offline too.
Yeah, just on that topic, yeah, another one, a related question that I had in mind too is, does it make sense to require there to be at least one implementation? Well, we have two types of implementations in SIG Multicluster. We have cloud providers and we have other projects. And so Ryan quoted all other projects there, but would it make sense to require there to be at least one cloud provider or not? I think that's a question we need to settle as well. But yeah, Arthur, you wanted to say something else?
Yeah, just to add on that, because right now there's only 2 property required, and technically you could just kubectl apply it and boom, you are compatible with cluster property. Do we want to up that notch so that, I don't know, maybe someday we have 10 required properties and it's complex to do it that way, or you just enroll it with Terraform or whatever tools you use to create your cluster? Yeah, that was part also of the like what is an implementation discussion, because it could be just your script that does 2 kubectl apply.
Yeah, well, same as in SIG and the MCS API, where we said that in theory it could just be a human transferring information around. But yeah, so
Right.
a good point as well. And Owen, you've lowered your hand. Does that mean?
I was going to change topics, so that's why I lowered my hand.
All
so
right.
if we have more on this, then please continue.
Apparently not. So if I summarize everything, we're waiting for Ryan to clean up the PR a little bit, and then some more offline discussion, maybe on Slack, to move this forward, and it will be put back on the scrub next week. So Owen, you can change the topic.
Yeah, I was just going to very quickly mention the thing I'd put on the scrub, which you also mentioned, just the cluster profiles credential kept. I'm hoping to try and drive that across the finish line, since Corentin's going to be away for a while. He just had a baby. It's exciting. Anyway, so yeah, please add any more comments or reviews. Like you mentioned, I think that the status is we're waiting on. Was it you and Jeremy?
Essentially, yeah.
So, okay. So whenever you get a chance.
Yeah. And so,
yeah,
do you have enough access to update the PR instead of Corentin, or if there are other updates required, would you start a new one with Corentin's commit and add stuff?
I don't think I do. Yeah, I was gonna maybe start a new PR, but
right.
Yeah, I can go ahead and do that. And then I guess I'll comment in the original PR, or should we continue the discussion in the original PR and then wait to submit?
Yeah, let's wait until it's required.
Great. Okay. Thanks. Sounds good.
Yeah, so it's good to know that you're taking over. Okay. All right. Well, if no one else has anything, yes, there's another hand up.
Yeah. Hey, I've joined a couple times here and there. My name's Alex. I run the CNCF batch scheduler working group. And as part of that, I just trying to see what other SIGs, what are the conversations we should all be connecting with. In the batch world, there are a number of batch schedulers, traditional HPC kind of workloads is what we talk about. There are a number of batch schedulers there that are themselves multi-cluster batch schedulers. And you're a multi-cluster group, and it feels like there might be topics of conversation that we can all align on. And so I've just been sort of lurking to try and understand what those overlapping topics might be, and if there are indeed places where we should all be communicating and just at least staying in contact to know what my group of people are thinking about and what your group of people are thinking about. So I just wanted to sort of like pipe up and invite that conversation to see whether there's any interest from your side or whether there's any obvious overlaps that you're seeing, and that we could all work together. That's basically my premise.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks for the intro. Laura, do you want to?
I'm just going to say yay, and I'm interested and cool. Welcome.
My pleasure.
And so actually, the credentials kept that Owen just brought up is one that could be relevant to multi-cluster batch schedulers, because that's all about publishing how to connect to different clusters. Mm-hmm. And it's something that came out, I think originally, Ryan, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but this came out partly from MultiQ.
Correct, yeah.
MultiQ is our like target, one of the 2 target project we want to incorporate that. So with initially when we first brought this to MultiQ, they came back and asked us to solve this credential problem. If we don't, because currently they basically just put a Kubernetes config on their pub cluster. That's it. So that they see the value if we can solve the credential problem, so that they don't have to do this. That definitely is a plus. So yeah, we're waiting to talk to them when this credential thing is more settled. I don't know if this is Multicube part of the batch SIG.
Well, so there are two batch conversations, which makes it confusing. There's one in the Kubernetes universe that is the Kubernetes batch working group, which is like a sister conversation to us. They have led the development of Q specifically, and so the development of Q and multi-Q happens in that batch working group, or the conversation around that happens there. However, the CNCF conversation that I lead is sort of all of the many batch schedulers that have been developed for Kubernetes or around Kubernetes over the years. Q is one of them, and we have people who are involved in the development of Q in there. But we also have the people from SCED-MD, Slurm stuff, or us with my company developed Armada, which is a multi-cluster batch scheduler, or IBM with MCAD, which is another multi-cluster batch scheduler, or Unicorn, or Volcano, or there's a long list of these things. So certainly, with the credential thing that you're talking about, even though it may have come out of the multi-queue experience, it very, very likely applies to a whole bunch of us. So yeah, things like that are absolutely in scope for why we overlap. I think another one that comes to mind is just where orchestration and scheduling overlap in the cloud world, where in a traditional HPC universe, you've bought your on-prem gear, and you know sort of how you've set it up and the topology that you have set it up with, and that's all cool. But in a cloud context, that's slightly different. You're requesting machines in a cloud provider, and you need to be able to spin those up within a certain rack or a certain network boundary, and so there's an orchestration piece that all of a sudden enters into the scheduling topic as well, which I think is where some of the questions that you all deal with probably sit. So I feel like there are multiple places where we're all entangled here, and it'd be great to continue the conversation somehow. Mike?
No, sorry, exactly. I think we have a few APIs already quite correlate with the batch, like the work API for sure, and as well as the ongoing cap right now placement decision is exactly what you were talking about. Right? So this definitely white place, and echoing what Laura say, you're most welcome into this group, and then hopefully we'll have quite a bit of conversation. Laura, please go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know, Alex, if you had like a specific idea of how you wanted to like engage, but I feel like there is definitely fertile ground for I think you to like inform us of a lot of like projects and status of things that like maybe some of us know, or maybe we know like 1% of or something, but I think you might have a lot more view of that, and I think we would really welcome if you could like even some of the stuff you just said about like here are all of these other batch projects that are like under the purview, like not a huge deep dive, but like something from the perspective of somebody who's like holistically been following those and can like put that in context for us, I think would help us be more intelligent conversation partners with you. Yeah, so I would request that, and then I think there's an aspect of that we can do too. I mean, obviously we sometimes get super in the weeds about our projects in these calls because this is the place where that happens, but if we kind of need to like connect the dots on some of those things, I think that's something we could make an effort to like reset and reestablish too, in the context of like, let's try and connect these two communities, I guess, basically. Yeah.
Completely. I'm happy to come and talk for however long, 20, 30 minutes or whatever on all of those projects that are within the scope of our thing, see where the conversation takes us. And likewise, I'd love it if an emissary from here can come and talk about all of the things that I can hear you're talking about. I 100% believe that there are people in my group who will be like, oh, you're talking about this. So and then I think as an ongoing thing, what I was hoping from my group is to send or to either me or get somebody else from my group to just keep on coming to this group to bring information back to the batch working group so that so that not everybody in that group has to join every single SIG, but there are a couple of different SIGs. This is one of them, the device management working group and the Kubernetes batch working group as well. Like just having from my group 1 or 2 people going to each one of these SIGs every time so that there's communication coming back and sort of flowing both ways was my sort of ongoing thought.
Cool. Yeah. I definitely think that is how to say, the pain. Communication is always the pain, but we're human, so we gotta try. And I do think we've had some lots of positive experiences, in fact, doing that type of cross-pollination with other SIGs in not in defined times, but they happen to like come and go. But I think now can be a time that is the case for as long as we have some shared context or people going both ways on the topic of batch. So yeah, thanks for bringing it up.
Sweet. Well, I'll continue to join, and if you want to target me for coming in and talking, just let me know when would be appropriate, and I'll put something together.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks. Could I ask you to add a link to your agenda doc?
Yep.
And in our document? Thanks.
Oh, in your document. Where's
or in the chat, and I'll add it. Thanks. I've got it from the chat.
Cool. Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you. And last call for any additional topics. So we didn't have any topics, but we've managed to fill nearly an hour.
Classic.
Yeah.
I have some questions regarding how to access the Google Drive for multi-cluster. Since I'm working on surveys and I'm using my own like a personal drive, so I'm looking for a multi-cluster related community drive. How do I get access?
Jeremy, do you know? Is that even something we can do? I think Jeremy's, not Jeremy's still around.
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that predates me.
Yeah. Well, we'll ping Contrivex. I'm not sure what we can do. So the idea would be to host a forum, I imagine. Is that right, Priya?
Sorry?
The idea would be to host you want somewhere to host a forum?
I think it's to move the form and the like related materials that are in Priya's personal drive now into something assumedly something that already exists, though I don't even know if that's necessarily the case, but something that is like under the Kubernetes org and within the that's what it's about.
Which is the right way to do things for sure, so that we can have shared orders. But I'll be honest, we have never used a shared drive since I joined this.
And I think there was an implication from Josh, but like ultimately from Contribex that like A, that's the right way to do it, which I think we can all agree, and B, that such a thing exists. And I think that second point we're not 100% actually sure on, but maybe now is the time to like make it, since we're going to have kind of like shared, like we're going to have this like good user data. So yeah, it may be something that we need to basically make. And to your question, Priya, doesn't exist within the control of like SIG-MC. So ultimately is like, doesn't serve its purpose yet.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the information. So for now, I think I will go with my own drive. Then if we have a multi-cluster related drive, then I'll move the information into that.
Yeah, I think that's sufficient for us. I mean, Jeremy and Stephen, I guess you can veto, but
Yeah,
Okay.
it's fine for now. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for attending and for the interesting conversations. And don't forget to go and review PRs and so on, and add stuff to the agenda for next week. And I'll see you then. Have a good rest of the week.
bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
Bye bye.
Thanks.
Bye.